So I'm here in the shop today and I just want to discuss rehumidifying a dried out acoustic and what the best way to really do that is. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that discuss how to do it. Some people use damp bits in the sound hole, some people use a cup of water. There's a few ways to go about it, but the best way that I found in my experience is by using a hygrometer and a simple room humidifier. So this acoustic right here is a Yamaha FS800, smaller body. I guess you would call it a folk size guitar. And it is brand new, but it was sitting in the store in storage in the box in the back room or whatnot, where the temperature is not humidified, and as a result the top dried out and became flat. There's supposed to be a little arch if you look underneath, and the butt end of the guitar underneath, really the bridge right around there. If you look at it from the side, there'll be a slight curvature to it, and that's the way it should be. When it dries out, it tends to go more flat. So looking online, there's a few different ways to humidify the guitar. Some are with damp bits, some are with, like I said, a cup of water, a few other things. But some of the issues with doing it that way is the guitar really goes into shock by getting so much water right away, and also it doesn't do the job of humidifying the neck. And because a rosewood fingerboard is usually unfinished, the neck tends to dry out rather quickly and you get fret sprout and things of that nature. So the best way that I found to do it, and the way I've done this over the last 10 years, is by using a basic room humidifier. I keep it about this distance, a couple feet away from the guitar, and I put the hygrometer right between the two middle strings of the guitar. As you can see now, it's reading 40%, and what that indicates is that the humidity at the sound hole, where the moisture inside the guitar is meeting the outside temperature, is 40%. When I first started to rehumidify this guitar, it was about 15 to 20%, and so we adjusted little by little. One way is to adjust is the amount of moisture that's getting into the guitar. It's to reach the optimal humidity is to just take your little humidifier and either turn it up or move it back and forth. I find moving it back and forth is easier and doesn't use as much water. You could get away with using less because you don't really need to humidify the entire room. We're just trying to humidify the air where the sound hole is, because that's where the air is mixing in and the dry air is getting in. So as you can see right now, it's at 40%, and that's giving us a reading. If we look from the side, this isn't in the sound hole, but the hygrometer is right outside the sound hole. So it's giving us a reading of the moisture that's getting into the guitar, the humidity in the air that's going into the sound hole, combined with the air that's escaping from the sound hole that's not as humidified, the dry air. What this is also doing is allowing the moisture to go upwards into the neck, especially down here where you tend to get the most fret sprout. So like I said, you could just move the hygrometer right to the sound hole, and you can take your humidifier and move it back and forth. One tank should last you like 2 or 3 days. You could really keep it on a very low humidity. The way to do this is you just turn it on and you see what the hygrometer is reading. In the beginning you leave it low and gradually increase. You get it first at 25 and then turn it up or move it to get it to 30, then 35, 40. What we're shooting for is around 40 to 50. That's going to be ideal, and we leave it for about 3-4 days. That's the temperature really and the humidity level that most manufacturers recommend anyways, right around 40 to 50, somewhere there, sometimes 45 to 55, but we don't want to overdo it, so we go with, you know, the lower end of that temperature and humidity range, which is really right around the low 70s in Fahrenheit and right around 40 to 45% humidity. And after 2 to 3 days, you'll just see the guitar playing much better. The top will come up and you'll know that the guitar was rehumidified. It's important to do this slowly and gradually. If your room temperature is anywhere like it is here in New York, where you could get really hot in the winter because you have the heat on indoors, and really dry because the heat is on, so you get like 15% humidity and 80 degrees, and so you slowly introduce the humidity to the guitar. We don't want to shock it by, you know, putting 3 dampits in there and giving it a 60 or 70% humidity reading inside the sound hole. What we want is right at the sound hole for the mixture of the air coming in and out to be at around 45%, and that will give you, you know, that's ideal. And after you do that, you want to set up the guitar, and then you want to try to keep it as close to that range as possible, because what happens is if you rehumidify the guitar and then put it back into that dry climate, the setup that you do is going to be useless. So a lot of people will, you know, rehumidify a dry acoustic guitar and then give it back to the customer, and the customer is just going to keep it back out the same way it was, and the guitar will dry out within a few more days. The technician will have made his money off the setup, but, you know, the guitar is not in playing condition anymore for the owner. So you need to do something and teach your customers about proper maintenance of the guitar. Now, the guitar needs a certain humidity level according to the manufacturer for optimal performance. If the guitar does dry out, if it's not too dry of a temperature, then it will stay within the parameters of the setup that you gave it. Otherwise, the action will change, the neck will shift, things will happen. Because remember, it's not really humidity or a lack of humidity that causes the issues like fret buzz, the neck warp, the top drying out on the guitar. What it is the changes in humidity that causes those issues, the constant changing, like in New York where I am, where you get very dry weather, and one week it's 15% humidity, the next week there's 80% humidity, one day you have 70% humidity, the next day could be 10% humidity, and this is all summer and all winter long. The shifts are constant. You know, the northeast of the United States is a really, really difficult place to keep acoustic guitars in optimal, really, temperature and humidity settings. But this is one way to do it. This is probably the best way to do it if you're trying to restore humidity into the guitar. I wouldn't recommend doing too much. You want to make sure that this takes time, because you don't want the wood shrinking and expanding quickly. You want it to be very slow and gradual, so that the lacquer and the finish on the guitar doesn't crack, and also so that the wood doesn't crack. Because if you would set this to 45% right away, what would end up happening is as soon as you turn it off, the wood would shrink again, and because it goes expand, shrink, you end up really damaging the wood and permanently altering the size of the wood that the guitar was built from. So we want to keep it as close to possible as what the manufacturer recommends, because those are the settings that the manufacturer built and set up the guitar in, and that's where it's going to perform optimally.